is drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% cent rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million using its locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
Introducing Korean broadcast content that you won't be able to stop watching. For weary modern souls, Dr. Romantic, the quirky genius doctor of Puldam Hospital, prescribes heartwarming tales of humanity. A couple together for 7 years sees their rose-tinted glasses shatter. Can they keep their relationship alive? Discover the raw stories of youth, work, and love. Beyond what social media can show, experience the vibrant Korea through its hidden gems. Mama, the ultimate K-pop festival for global fans. Find your star in a feast of trendy music and electrifying performances. Now, the whole world enjoys it together.
U.S. President Donald Trump has scrapped his plan to charge a 20% fee on cargo shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, just 1 day after proposing the measure. But this does not signal an easing of U.S. pressure on Iran, as the United States reimposed a naval blockade of all Iranian ports. SK hynix American depository receipts surged more than 27% on Wall Street, rebounding from a sharp drop in the previous session. This was mainly driven by renewed Wall Street demand for AI memory stocks and a strong interest following the launch of leveraged ETFs linked to the Korean chipmaker. The hourly minimum wage for next year in Korea has been set at 10,700 won. This marks a 3.7% increase from this year, following months of negotiations involving representatives from labor, business, and the public. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. We begin today with the latest on the situation in the Middle East. The United States is dropping a proposed charge on commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, opting instead for billions of dollars in new Gulf investment. This comes as the U.S. tightens pressure on Tehran with a renewed maritime blockade targeting Iranian vessels and cargo. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
US President Donald Trump has reversed his plan to charge civilian ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz a fee equivalent to 20% of their cargo value just 1 day after announcing the measure. On Tuesday, Trump said the proposed fee would instead be replaced by new trade and investment agreements with Middle Eastern countries, following what he described as very productive talks with regional leaders. Trump had announced a day earlier that the US military would guarantee safe passage for civilian vessels through Hormuz in return for a payment equal to 20% of the value of cargo carried aboard each ship. The White House argued the charge would compensate Washington for the cost of US forces protecting commercial shipping from Iranian attacks. But the plan drew opposition internationally, particularly from Middle Eastern energy exporters heavily reliant on the strait. Trump named Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain and Kuwait among the countries prepared to invest more heavily in the United States instead.
I don't think anybody should be able to charge a fee for the strait or for any other strait relationship in terms of other sections of the world. I don't think anybody should be really in that position. But we were doing it as a reimbursement. The Gulf states are going to invest a tremendous amount of money into the United States, and that was very satisfactory to me. I think it's actually much better. I fought for that.
The reversal does not signal an easing of US pressure on Iran. US Central Command resumed a maritime blockade beginning 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. The blockade applies to vessels travelling to and from Iranian ports and coastal areas, as well as ships carrying goods linked to Iranian cargo. Trump said the Strait of Hormuz remains open to all other vessels and has claimed oil is flowing more smoothly because of US military presence. He also said the era of Iran killing hundreds of thousands of people, which he said included 52,000 protesters, was over, and insisted Tehran would never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. In a Fox News interview on Tuesday, Trump warned Iran that its power plants and bridges could become targets as early as next week. He said US and Iranian delegations had been in contact that day, but threatened to destroy the facilities if Tehran refused to return to the negotiating table. Seong, Arirang News.
SK hynix American depository receipts on Tuesday surged more than 27% on Wall Street on their third day of trading, rebounding sharply from a 9.3% drop in the previous session. The ADRs closed at $193.92 on the Nasdaq. The rally was driven by renewed Wall Street demand for AI memory stocks, along with strong interest following the launch of leveraged exchange-traded funds linked to SK hynix. The ADRs are trading at a premium of roughly 20 to 30% over the company's total listed shares, as strong U.S. demand continues to outpace the limited supply available to American investors. And following the overnight rally on Wall Street and a jump in SK hynix ADR shares, Korean stocks also saw massive gains this morning, triggering buy-side sidecars on both the benchmark KOSPI and secondary KOSDAQ. The market soared over 6% shortly after opening. As of 9:25 a.m., the KOSPI was trading at 7,325, up 6.8% from the previous session. The rally is largely being led by large-cap tech shares, with Samsung Electronics jumping over 6% and SK hynix rising over 11%. Korea's import prices turned lower in June due to a decrease in global oil prices. Data released today by the Bank of Korea showed the import price index decreased 4.4% from the previous month. This is the steepest monthly decline in 3.5 years. The central bank said lower prices for coal and petroleum products drove the decline in import prices. Export prices were unchanged from May, as gains in semiconductor prices and a weaker Korean won offset lower petroleum product prices. After months of negotiations, South Korea has finalized its minimum wage for next year. The new hourly rate of 10,700 won was approved by a vote after labor and business representatives failed to bridge their final differences. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
The Minimum Wage Commission on Tuesday set South Korea's legal minimum wage for next year at 10,700 won, or about $7.20 per hour. The new rate marks a 3.7% increase from this year's minimum wage of 10,321. The decision came after lengthy negotiations involving representatives from labor, business, and the public. During Tuesday's meeting, the two sides submitted a total of 13 revised proposals in an effort to reach a compromise. Labor representatives initially demanded a minimum wage of 12,000 won an hour, arguing that workers need greater support to keep up with rising living costs. Business groups, meanwhile, called for the wage to remain unchanged at this year's level, citing concerns over rising labor costs and the burden on small businesses.
The minimum wage is a uniform standard, so the decision should be based on the realities facing small businesses and vulnerable sectors that are already struggling to keep up with the current wage.
In the final round of negotiations, labor lowered its proposal to 10,731, while business representatives offered 10,701. With the two sides unable to bridge the remaining 31 gap, the commission put the issue to a vote and ultimately adopted the business side's proposal. Under the law, the commission was required to finalize next year's minimum wage by mid-July, allowing the labor minister to officially announce the new rate by August 5th. The 2026 minimum wage had increased 2.9% from the previous year. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea added 63,000 jobs in June on year, marking the first rebound in 2 months. According to the Ministry of Data and Statistics today, the number of people aged 15 and over reached 29.15 million in June, an increase of 63,000 compared to the same month last year. The employment rate for people aged 15 and over came to 63.4%, down 0.2 percentage points from a year earlier, continuing a downward trend for a third straight month. By industry, employment in the manufacturing sector fell by 97,000, marking the 24th consecutive month of decline. The number of employed people aged 15 to 29 decreased by 197,000 compared to a year earlier. The National Museum of Korea saw a record-breaking number of visitors in the first half of this year. According to the museum on Wednesday, nearly 3.8 million people visited between January and June, marking a nearly 40% jump from the same period last year. The number of foreign visitors also saw a sharp increase, surging nearly 70% over the past year. With daily visitors averaging 17,000, which is above the museum's recommended capacity of 15,000, the museum is now pushing to expand its facilities and organizational structure to manage any overcrowding. Marking 2 decades of cooperation along the East Asian-Australasian Flyway, an international forum has been held in int'l, home to globally important wetlands that provide vital habitats for migratory waterbirds. Our Cho-young-eun reports.
The black-faced spoonbill, one of the world's rarest waterbirds, was once on the brink of extinction. Its global population fell below 400 in the 1990s, leading to its classification as endangered on the IUCN Red List. Today, the population has rebounded to more than 7,000 and the species has been reclassified as vulnerable. Its remarkable recovery is regarded as one of the greatest conservation success stories along the East Asian-Australasian Flyway, where governments, conservation experts, and partner organizations have worked together to protect migratory birds and their habitats.
Well, the black-faced spoonbill has been one of our 7 flagship species. And so I think now we have a model about how to make the saving of a species work.
Experts say protecting migratory birds begins with protecting their habitats, especially coastal wetlands. As rapid urbanization and coastal development continue across the region, experts stress that no single country can protect biodiversity alone.
It's important that these efforts at the region are also not just promoted and sustained across the 11 member states of ASEAN, but across generation, because our efforts will continue beyond several generations.
Korea provides a strong example of such cooperation, with its tidal flats serving as important breeding and feeding grounds for endangered species. Since the Korean tidal flats were inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List in 2021, efforts to protect and manage the sites have been strengthened through closer cooperation between local governments and international partners. Experts say such global recognition helps highlight the importance of conserving habitats and maintaining ecological connectivity.
Korea's West Coast tidal flats are exceptionally rich in biodiversity, providing abundant food resources for migratory birds. Preventing the loss and degradation of these wetlands is therefore essential to protecting their feeding grounds. Resting areas are also important, but continued coastal development has left birds with fewer places to rest when the tide comes in.
After the momentum built here over the past 2 decades, there are even stronger calls for long-term cooperation, with the future of biodiversity depending on shared global commitments extending beyond national borders. Cho-young-eun, Arirang News.
The Korea Aerospace Administration, or KASA, is celebrating its 2nd anniversary. Launched to lead Korea's independent space development, KASA is now looking to take Korea further into the global space race. Our Kim Sa-young has the details.
The United States established NASA back in 1958, setting up a dedicated agency to lead its space program. Just over a decade later, in 1969, NASA put the first humans on the moon. And more recently, Through its Artemis program, it has continued to drive the next phase of moon exploration. Japan has also built a strong reputation in space, especially in asteroid exploration. Behind the success is JAXA, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency modeled on NASA. As space development gained momentum around the world, calls grew in Korea for a dedicated government body to oversee the country's space ambitions. That discussion picked up speed during Korea's 20th presidential election campaign. Then, in 2023, a special law was enacted to establish the Korea Aerospace Administration. The following year, KASA officially opened in Sacheon, Gyeongsang-do province.
We want to give the private sector a bigger role in driving Korea's space development. We hope to lay the groundwork for Korea to play a bigger role in space development.
The global space economy is projected to grow to $1.8 trillion or roughly 2,716 trillion Korean won by 2035. With space emerging as the next major growth engine, KASA is now working to secure Korea's place in the global space race. Kim Seo-young, Arirang News.
This is the world now. Federal Reserve Chairman Kevin Warsh told lawmakers on Tuesday he would continue doing his job if challenged by President Trump. His comments come as new data showed consumer prices in June rose by less than expected. Testifying before the House Financial Services Committee, Warsh cited a recent Supreme Court ruling reaffirming the central bank's independence in setting monetary policy. Also on Tuesday, inflation data showed the U.S. Consumer Price Index increased by 3.5% year-on-year, which was less than expected. Warsh cautioned against reading too much into the improvement, saying he would not, quote, cherry-pick 1 month of data as a sign that inflation had been resolved. Energy prices drove much of the decline, though oil prices have since climbed again following renewed conflict in the Middle East. Kevin Warsh will testify again before the Senate Banking Committee on Wednesday. In the U.S., writer E. Jean Carroll has collected just over $5.6 million from President Trump following a 2023 jury verdict finding him liable for sexual abuse and defamation. A federal judge authorized the payment last week over Trump's objections, and funds were released to Carroll's legal team on Monday. The amount covers the original $5 million verdict plus accumulated interest. This comes after the Supreme Court rejected Trump's appeal of the verdict last month. It marks the first time Trump has been forced to pay Carroll, who has now won a combined $88.3 million across 2 separate civil verdicts since first denying her allegations in 2019. A spokesperson for Trump's legal team maintained the case represents a politically motivated attack, calling the case a hoax. Spain have reached the World Cup final with a 2-0 victory over France. Mikel Oyarzabal opened the scoring with a first-half penalty before Pedro Porro doubled Spain's lead in the second half. Spain limited France to just 2 shots on target throughout the match. The victory at Dallas Stadium in Texas on Tuesday sends Spain to its first World Cup final since winning the tournament in 2010. Spain will face either England or Argentina in Sunday's showpiece final in New Jersey. A fossilized skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus rex has sold for $50.1 million, becoming the most expensive dinosaur fossil ever auctioned. The specimen, nicknamed Gus, far exceeded its pre-sale estimate after a bidding war by 7 collectors. The sale at Sotheby's on Tuesday surpasses the previous record of $44.6 million paid for a Stegosaurus skeleton in 2024. Discovered in South Dakota and estimated at 67 million years old, Gus contains 183 fossil bone elements and is considered one of the most complete T-Rex specimens ever found. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
The worst of the heavy rain is over, but wet and windy weather continues across the country this afternoon. Most of the central regions will see 5 to 20 millimeters of rainfall, while Jeollabuk-do province could see up to 40 millimeters. Heat alerts also remain in place for the East Coast and most of the Gyeongsang-do provinces, with afternoon temperatures hovering above 35 degrees Celsius again. And of course, the humidity will remain high, so it's going to be quite muggy nationwide. And this afternoon, intense heat takes a break in the capital area with an expected high of 29 degrees here in Seoul. Gwangju will be topping out at 32 degrees. Daegu, Gyeongju both will be getting up to 35 degrees. Meanwhile, wind advisories remain in place for most of the East Coast. Then looking ahead, rain returns again tomorrow in the southern parts of Korea, and it's going to be wet through the long weekend with nationwide rain forecasted for Sunday.
Now that's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.